Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to pass an array as a function argument and then how to create and access a two-dimensional array. So let's start off with arrays as function arguments. So I've already created an array or declared one and initialized it with some grades. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pass it to a function that's going to return the average. Kind of the same thing we did with a vector. We're going to call this average grades. And then you're going to see my parameters. So my first parameter is the array. And so I always use just the generic term ARR. But what you have to do is, if it's going to be an array, you have to pass an empty set of brackets, square brackets, like that. That lets the compiler know that the first parameter is an array. The second parameter in this case is going to be the number of elements in the array, which I always abbreviate as SZ for size. So the compiler won't know in advance. You can't use a range for loop in a function with an array, so we have to pass the size also. After that, it's very straightforward. We know the drill for writing this code, so we'll just do it real quick. That gets our total. Whoa, 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 whoa. On the wrong keys there. Then cast the total as double, divide it by the size, and then return that. And of course I could have written this as one statement, but just return and then the computation right here, but I'll write it out for y'all. So then all we have to do now is just call the function with our array. I can't type, sorry. With our array, which is numbers. It's actually grades now, but we're going to keep it numbers. And our size num elements, then see out. The average grade is grade average. Oops, there we go. And then a new line. So let's run that. Oops, where did we mess up? Oh, we have too many grades. Okay, yeah, so let's fix that. There we go. Easy to make that mistake. Okay, so there's our average is 80.4. Sorry. And that looks very close. I was going to look at the numbers here. Yeah, that looks about right. All right, so to recap, to pass an array to a function as a parameter or an argument, in the parameter you have to provide a name, a placeholder, along with empty square brackets to indicate that it is an array. And then you also have to always pass the size so that you'll know how to access the array within its bounds or within its limits. So next thing I wanted to do is look at two-dimensional arrays. So what I'm going to do is I'll comment out this code, but I'll leave it here so you can have it. And then I'm going to work on my two-dimensional array up here. So a two-dimensional array is like a table or a spreadsheet where you have rows and columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some constants. We're going to do a simple little 3x3 array. So to declare my array, I'm going to say int class grades rows cols. So you see how you do that there. You have two sets of brackets, one for the rows and one for the columns. So the rows are going up and down, the columns are going across. So, but I can also simplify this by also creating a initialization list or initializer with some grades. And I'm going to do this in a kind of a very structured format here. So let's do this. Let's do it row by row. Whoops. Yeah. Code blocks goes crazy when you try to do stuff like this. So let's fix it here. So I'll fix it at the end here. No, that ain't going to work, so hang on. Okay, so you notice how I did that. We have a set of curly braces to represent the entire two-dimensional array, and then each row has its own set. And then within that second set would be the data elements for that row: 81, 82, 83, 71, 72, 73, 91, 92, 93. Now all I'm going to do this time is access these. So to do that, we're going to have to write what are called nested for loops. We have two sets of for loops: an outer set, which represents the rows, and an inner set, or an inner loop, which represents the columns. So you see how I did that? Just like that. And then we just want to write these out. So we're going to write out class grades, row, call, like that. There we go. Then we want to put a space. Okay. Now, let's run this just to see what we get. Just make sure everything else. Oh, the function's fine. All right, so let's run our code. And oops, look at that. So we got all of our data, but notice that they're all on the same line. That's because what happened was, all right, so the outer loop starts, so row is 0. The inner loop column goes from 0 to 2, and so it prints out 81, 82, 83. Then that ends the inner loop, so we increment the outer loop, so now row becomes 1, and then we write these out. Then when that's finished, we increment the outer loop again, and we get 91, 92, 93. The problem is that there's no spacing after each inner loop. So what we need to do is we need to just add a new line between the inner loop and the outer loop. And let's run that again. And there we go. So from here you could figure out how to compute the average for each. If this was each row was a student, you could figure out the average for each student. You could just do totals. You could actually work the other way and figure out, okay, what was the average for one test by averaging the columns instead of across on the rows. And all you got to do there is manipulate what the inner loop and the outer loop are doing. And with that, that wraps up this video on arrays as function arguments and two-dimensional arrays.